What does it mean to return to a place that broke you? Is it an act of courage or an act of defiance? For 11 years, Nia Preston had asked herself that question in the quiet moments between translating for billionaires in Tokyo and tucking a little girl in a bed in a sprawling penthouse overlooking the city lights. 11 years since she had fled Harmony Creek, a ghost in the rearview mirror of a borrowed car, with nothing but a shattered reputation and the clothes on her back. Now, the ghost was returning, not as a whisper, but as a thunderclap. The car that rolled into the town square was not borrowed. It was a gleaming black sedan, silent as a predator, with windows so dark they reflected the town's gaping disbelief back at itself. When the rear door opened, it was not a broken teenager who emerged. It was a woman sculpted from resolve. Her coat was the color of cream, tailored with a precision that Harmony Creek's single dress shop couldn't even comprehend. Her hair, once a wild halo she was told to tame, was now styled in elegant locks adorned with subtle gold cuffs that caught the afternoon sun. But it was not her clothes or her quiet confidence that made the town collectively hold its breath. It was the small hand she held. A little girl of about 6 with bright, inquisitive eyes and shining black hair looked around with open curiosity. The child, Hannah, was the living, breathing embodiment of a world Harmony Creek could not touch. As Nia led her toward the small park, whispers followed them like fallen leaves in a storm. Is that Nia Preston? Couldn't be. She ran off, remember? Look at her clothes. And that little girl, she doesn't look like her. Nia heard it all. She had prepared for it. She had spent over a decade building an armor of success and serenity, piece by meticulous piece. Yet, the familiar sting was still there, a phantom limb of a pain she thought she had amputated long ago. She knelt down, adjusting the collar on Hannah's coat, her back to the prying eyes of the town that had judged and condemned her. Are they looking at us, Mama Nia? Hannah asked in a voice that was a mixture of Japanese and carefully enunciated English. Nia smiled, a genuine, warm expression reserved only for this child. They're just surprised to see someone so beautiful and so smart has come to visit their little town, she said softly. She called her Mama Nia. It was a title of honor, a role of trust bestowed upon her by the child's father, Kaito Tanaka, a man whose name was a legend in the global tech industry. Nia was not just Hannah's governess or caretaker. She was her guardian, her mentor, her shield. Her gaze drifted from Hannah's face to the building across the square, the old, defunct public library. Its windows were boarded up, paint peeling from the columns like sunburnt skin. That was the place where her life had split in two, the place where the lie had been born, the place where Marcus Thorne had smiled at her, the golden boy of Harmony Creek, and stolen her future with a single, venomous act. He had framed her for plagiarism on the scholarship essay that was her one and only ticket out, and the town, so eager to believe in its star quarterback over the quiet, bookish black girl from the other side of the tracks, had swallowed the lie whole. Her own parents, God rest their souls, had been broken by the shame. They had died years later, buried under a mountain of medical debt this town did nothing to alleviate. Returning was not just about defiance. It was about reclamation. She looked at the decaying library, not with pain, but with the cool, appraising eye of a buyer. She was here to purchase a memory. She was here to tear down a ruin and build a legacy. The whispers could continue. The stares could burn. They thought they knew the story of Nia Preston, the disgraced girl who ran away. They had no idea she was about to write the final chapter. The memory of the library was a physical thing, a weight that settled in her chest, even now, 11 years later. It smelled of decaying paper, lemon polish, and the faint, cloying scent of the librarian's rosewater perfume. She had been 17, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The acceptance letter to the university was in her bag, but it was conditional on the Harrison Scholarship, a full ride endowed by the town's founding family. It was her only path. Her parents, a mechanic and a nursing aide, had poured every spare dollar and every ounce of hope into her education. This scholarship wasn't just for her, it was for them. She had spent weeks on her essay, The Architecture of Community, It was about how public spaces like libraries and parks were not just buildings, but the load-bearing walls of a society holding people together. It was the best thing she had ever written. She remembered seeing Marcus Thorne at a nearby table, his own application spread out. He was the town's prince, heir to the Thorne hardware dynasty, destined for a business degree and a life of comfortable success. He'd given her a lazy, charming smile. "Working hard, Preston? Don't strain yourself." She had just nodded, her focus absolute. The next day, she was called into the head librarian's office. Mrs. Gable, a woman who had once praised her love of reading, looked at her with cold disappointment. On her desk was Nia's essay, and next to it, a printout from a university journal with entire paragraphs highlighted. They were identical. "Marcus brought this to my attention," Mrs. Gable had said, her voice devoid of warmth. "He was concerned. He said he saw you looking at this journal yesterday." It was a lie. A dizzying, world-tilting lie. She had never seen that journal in her life. "I didn't," she had stammered, her voice small. "I wrote that." Every word, but the evidence was there. And Marcus, the concerned citizen, was the one who had brought it forward. The committee was convened. Marcus, with his flawless record and influential family, testified with a heavy heart about how he'd seen her near the periodicals, how he'd hoped he was wrong. Her protests were drowned out by the town's eagerness to believe in its hero and vilify the outsider. The scholarship was rescinded. Her university acceptance was revoked. The whispers started instantly. Cheat, plagiarist, liar. Her parents' faces, etched with a confusion and shame that cut deeper than any accusation, haunted her dreams. Within a week, she was gone, leaving a note that said only, "I'm sorry." She was sorry they had to endure the humiliation. She was sorry she couldn't fix it. Now, sitting in the sterile, air-conditioned office of Harmony Creek's only real estate lawyer, Mr. Henderson, the past felt both a lifetime away and terrifyingly close. Henderson, a man whose jowls had grown heavier with the years, peered at her over his spectacles. "The old library? It's been on the market for 5 years, Ms. Preston. Structurally unsound. Full of asbestos. It's a tear-down, plain and simple, I'm aware," Nia said, her voice even. She slid a cashier's check across the polished desk. "My client is offering the full asking price. In cash. We wish to close as soon as possible." Henderson's eyes widened at the figure on the check, a number that could buy half the properties on Main Street. He cleared his throat, his demeanor shifting from skeptical to obsequious. "Your client?" Just then, the door to the office burst open. In walked Marcus Thorne. He was older, thicker around the middle, but he wore the same veneer of self-satisfied charm. He was a town councilman now, a position that amplified his sense of ownership over Harmony Creek. He stopped short when he saw her. The charming smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of something she recognized. Panic. "Nia?" he said, his voice a strange mix of shock and condescension. "What in the world are you doing here?" "Hello, Marcus," she replied, her gaze level, unblinking. She didn't stand. She didn't offer a hand. She held her ground, a queen in her own right. "I'm buying the library." Marcus let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You? With what money?" He looked from her to the check on the desk, and his face darkened. He saw the name of the holding corporation, a subsidiary of Tanaka Industries. "What is this? What kind of game are you playing?" "It's not a game," Nia said, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous calm. "It's a transaction. Something you should understand well." The air crackled with 11 years of unspoken history. Mr. Henderson looked between them, his face pale. The first ripple had been sent, and it was already turning into a wave. Marcus Thorne, the man who had built his life on her ruin, was looking at her not as the girl he had destroyed, but as a threat he could not comprehend. And he was right to be afraid. Marcus's recovery was swift, his politician's mask sliding perfectly back into place. He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms in a display of casual authority. "Look, Nia, it's good to see you. But the old library is a sensitive issue. It's a town landmark. The council has to approve any sale, especially to an outside corporation." His eyes flicked to the check again. We can't just have some foreign company coming in here and putting up a factory or something. Nia met his gaze without flinching. The girl who would have crumbled under his scrutiny was long gone. In her place was a woman who had negotiated with men who could buy and sell countries, men who made Marcus Thorne look like a petulant child. The plans for the property will be made public in due course, she said, her tone clipped and final. She turned back to Mr. Henderson, dismissing Marcus as if he were nothing more than a mild interruption. My lawyer will be in touch to finalize the paperwork. I expect the council's approval to be a formality, given the property has been a derelict public hazard for years. She stood, the movement fluid and deliberate. She was taller than she had been at 17, and her posture radiated a power that was entirely her own. As she walked toward the door, she paused beside Marcus. For a moment, she was close enough to see the fine lines of stress around his eyes, the faint sheen of sweat on his brow. This town may not have changed, Marcus, she whispered, her voice too low for the lawyer to hear. But I have, with that. She was gone, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Marcus stared at the empty doorway, his heart hammering in his chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. Nia Preston was a ghost, a cautionary tale he sometimes told himself to justify his own success. She wasn't supposed to come back. She certainly wasn't supposed to come back like this, poised, wealthy, and looking at him with eyes that held not a shred of fear, only a cold, hard reckoning. He stormed over to Henderson's desk. Who is she working for? Tanaka Industries? Who is that? Henderson, flustered, was already typing furiously into his computer. They're massive, Marcus. A Japanese tech conglomerate. Global reach. Their CEO, Kaito Tanaka, is one of the richest men in the world. They're into everything. Robotics, AI, pharmaceuticals. Marcus felt a cold dread seep into his bones. This was bigger than he thought. This wasn't some petty revenge. This was an invasion. He had to get ahead of it. He had to control the narrative, just like he had 11 years ago. He spent the rest of the day on the phone, calling the other council members, planting seeds of doubt and fear. He painted a picture of a predatory corporation using a local girl with a troubled past as their pawn. He spoke of preserving Harmony Creek's heritage, of protecting them from outside interests. It was the same playbook he had always used, the one that appealed to the town's insular nature and its deep-seated suspicion of anything, or anyone, different. That evening, Nia sat with Hannah in the living room of the sprawling, modern house she had rented on the outskirts of town. It was a glass and steel structure that looked entirely alien among the neighboring farmhouses, a statement in itself. They were building a complex Lego castle, Hannah chattering happily about the different rooms. Nia's phone buzzed. It was a text from her real estate contact. Marcus Thorne just called an emergency town council meeting for next week. Agenda: to discuss the unsolicited corporate acquisition of the Harmony Creek Public Library. Nia read the message, and a slow, determined smile touched her lips. She had known he would do this. She had counted on it. Marcus believed his power lay in the court of public opinion, in the familiar rooms where his voice held weight. He didn't understand that Nia was no longer playing on his field. She was building a new one entirely. Everything okay, Mama Nia? Hannah asked, noticing the shift in her expression. Nia looked down at the bright, trusting face of the girl who had become the center of her universe. She had found Nia 6 years ago, a shy, grieving child who had just lost her mother. And Nia, who had been a high-level translator for Kaito Tanaka's company, had been the only one who could coax the little girl out of her silent shell. Her gift wasn't just with languages. It was with the unspoken language of the heart. Everything is going exactly as planned, Nia said, her voice soft but laced with steel. The next day, the entire town of Harmony Creek looked to the sky. A sound, a rhythmic whirring, grew from a distant hum to a deafening roar. A sleek, silver helicopter descended from the clouds, its blades whipping the autumn leaves into a frenzy. It landed not at the tiny municipal airfield, but in the large, open field adjacent to the old library, a flagrant and powerful display. The door slid open, and a man emerged. He was tall and lean, dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored suit that seemed to absorb the very light around him. His face was sharp, intelligent, and utterly unreadable. This was Kaido Tanaka, the Ice King of Tech. He walked with a quiet, predatory grace toward the edge of the field, where Nia was waiting for him, Hana holding her hand. The town watched, mesmerized, from their windows and storefronts. This was no longer just Nia Preston's return. This was something else entirely. Kaido's eyes, which surveyed billion-dollar assets with cold calculation, softened almost imperceptibly as they landed on his daughter. He knelt, speaking to her in rapid, gentle Japanese. Hana giggled and hugged him tightly. Then he stood, his gaze shifting to Nia. "The council meeting has been called," he stated. It was not a question. "He is predictable," Nia replied simply. Kaido surveyed the crumbling library, then the town square, his expression one of polite disdain. "This place is full of ghosts for you. Are you certain this is the only way?" His concern was genuine. He was a man who valued efficiency and logic above all else. Yet he had sanctioned this deeply personal, strategically illogical campaign on her word alone. He trusted her. That trust was a greater treasure than any check she could cash. "Some ghosts don't fade, Kaido," Nia said, her eyes fixed on the library. "They have to be exorcised. He built his life on my ruin. I'm here to prove that the foundation was faulty." Kaido nodded slowly, a silent acknowledgement of the debt he owed her, not just for his daughter's well-being, but for a pivotal moment in his own past that only the two of them knew about. "Then let us give them a spectacle," he said, his voice flat but carrying an undercurrent of immense power. He gestured toward the town. "He thinks this is his stage. He does not realize we own the theater." The arrival of the helicopter and its formidable passenger had changed the texture of the town's gossip. The story was no longer just about the local girl who came back. It was about the titan of industry who had come with her. Marcus Thorne felt the ground shifting beneath his feet. His narrative of the predatory corporation was now complicated by the undeniable glamour and power on display. He redoubled his efforts, framing it as a David and Goliath story. He was David, the humble councilman, protecting his home from the foreign giant, Goliath. He conveniently forgot to mention that he had been the Goliath in Nia's story. Nia, meanwhile, made her next move. She didn't engage in the war of words. Instead, she took Hana to the town diner for lunch. The diner fell silent as they walked in. Every eye was on them. Nia ignored the stares, helping Hana into a booth and ordering them both milkshakes, just as her own father had done for her in that very same booth 2 decades ago. Sarah Jenkins was working the counter. Sarah had been her closest friend in high school, the one who had seen her every day, the one who knew she would never cheat. But when the accusations flew, Sarah had been silent. She had looked away in the hallways, terrified of being tainted by the same brush. Seeing her now, her face etched with the weariness of years spent in the same small town, Nia felt a pang of old sadness. Sarah nervously brought their milkshakes over, her hands trembling slightly. "Nia," she whispered, her eyes darting around the packed diner. I am sorry. About then. I was scared, I know," Nia said, her voice gentle. There was no anger in it, only a profound sense of loss for the friendship that had been a casualty of the lie. Later that week, Nia sought Sarah out after her shift. They met by the creek that gave the town its name, the water burbling over smooth stones. The air was crisp, the silence broken only by the rustling leaves. "Why did you come back?" Sarah asked, her voice raw with a guilt she had clearly carried for years. "You escaped. You made a new life. Why come back here?" "I have to," Nia said simply. "Not for revenge. For truth." She looked at Sarah, her gaze direct and searching. "You were there, Sarah. You knew me. You knew I wrote that essay. You knew Marcus was always jealous of anyone who got praise he thought belonged to him." Sarah flinched, tears welling in her eyes. "He told me to stay out of it. He said his father could make things very difficult for my family's farm if I spoke up. We were already struggling. I was a coward, Nia. I was 18, and I was a coward." The confession hung in the air between them. Nia reached out, not to touch her, but as a gesture of understanding. We were all just kids, Sarah. Fear makes people do things they regret. The question is what you do with that regret. Sarah finally broke, sobbing openly. Through her tears, she confessed something more. I have something. I don't know if it's anything. After all happened, he was bragging in an email to his cousin. He thought it was hilarious. How he'd handled the competition. My computer crashed years ago, but my dad is a pack rat. He saved the old hard drive. It might still be on there, a flicker of light in the 11-year darkness. A digital ghost. Can you find it? Nia asked, her voice tight with emotion. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes, a new resolve on her face. For you, Nia? I'll tear that attic apart. While Sarah searched for a ghost in a machine, Kaido and Nia strategized. They sat in the minimalist living room of her rented house, a holographic display shimmering between them showing blueprints and financial projections. Kaido, ever the pragmatist, was focused on contingency plans. If the council blocks the sale, we can exert legal pressure. Their grounds are flimsy. We can tie them in litigation for years. Nia shook her head, her focus elsewhere. That's not the way. This isn't a legal battle, Kaido. It's a battle for the heart of the town. You can't win that in a courtroom. He looked at her, his respect for her unorthodox methods evident. What is your strategy then? He is using the past against you, then I will use the future, she said. A future they can't resist. This was her gift, the one Kaido had recognized years ago. It wasn't just her fluency in 6 languages. It was her fluency in human nature. She could read the subtext in a negotiation, the fear behind a bravado-filled statement, the hope hidden in a community's cynicism. He remembered the moment he truly understood her value. It was in a boardroom in Seoul. A multi-billion-dollar merger was collapsing. The Korean chairman, an elderly, traditional man, was about to walk away, insulted by Kaido's team's blunt, Western-style approach. The translators were relaying words, but they were missing the soul of the conversation. Kaido was about to lose the biggest deal of his career. Then Nia, a junior translator at the time, had stepped forward. She had bowed deeply to the chairman and spoken to him in flawless, formal Korean. She hadn't just translated Kaido's next words. She had reframed them. She spoke of legacy, of building something for future generations, of the honor in joining 2 great industrial families. She translated not the literal meaning, but the intent Kaido should have had. She had salvaged the deal in under 5 minutes. After that, he had promoted her, made her his personal advisor, and when his wife passed away, he had entrusted her with the most precious thing in his life, his daughter. He trusted her instincts more than he trusted his own data analysts. The town hall meeting is in 2 days, he said. What do you need from me? I need you to be there, Nia replied. I need you to sit in the front row with Hannah. And I need you to trust me. No matter what you hear, the night of the town hall meeting, the atmosphere was electric. The small auditorium was packed, people standing along the walls. It felt less like a council meeting and more like a trial. Kaido, Nia, and Hannah walked in, and a hush fell over the crowd. Kaido, in his dark suit, was an intimidating presence, a specter of immense wealth and power. Hannah, holding Nia's hand, looked small and innocent, a stark contrast to the tension in the room. They took their seats in the front row, a silent, united front. Marcus Thorne stood at the podium, basking in the attention. He was in his element. He began by speaking of heritage, of small-town values, of the sacredness of their history. He painted a picture of himself as the town's faithful guardian. Then, he turned his attention to Nia. Now, we have a proposal from an outside entity, represented by one of our own who left us some years ago. He began, his voice dripping with false sympathy. And while we wish her well, we have to ask, why this building? Why now? What are the true intentions of this massive, foreign corporation? Are they here to help us, or to exploit us, using a familiar face to gain our trust? He let the questions hang in the air. He was a master of insinuation. He brought up her past troubles, the unfortunate incident with the scholarship, framing it as a pattern of untrustworthiness. He didn't have to say the words. The whole town remembered. He was reopening the wound, pouring salt in it, and using it as his primary weapon. The crowd murmured, swayed by his familiar rhetoric. They looked at Nia with renewed suspicion. Kaido's jaw tightened. His hand clenched into a fist. Every instinct screamed at him to stand up, to unleash his lawyers, to crush this insignificant man. But he remembered Nia's words. Trust me. He looked at her. She was perfectly still, her expression unreadable. She was not looking at Marcus. She was looking at the faces in the crowd, the people who had once been her neighbors, her teachers, her friends. When Marcus finished his speech to a smattering of applause, the mayor, a man named Henderson, looked nervously toward Nia. Ms. Preston, would you or your client care to respond? Nia stood and walked to the podium. She didn't carry any notes. The silence in the room was absolute. She looked out at the sea of faces, her gaze lingering on a few. The grocer who had given her candy as a child, the teacher who had encouraged her to write, the parents of her former friends. Hello, she began, her voice clear and steady, amplified by the microphone. It held no trace of the trembling girl they remembered. My name is Nia Preston, and it is true, I left this town 11 years ago under a cloud of shame. A shame that was not mine to carry, but I carried it anyway, because I was a child and I didn't know how to set it down. A ripple of discomfort went through the crowd. Mr. Thorne asks why I have returned. He asks about my intentions. He wants you to be afraid of what I represent. He is right to be afraid. Not because I am here to harm this town, but because I am here to heal it. She paused, letting the words sink in. He talks about the library as a landmark. But for the last 5 years, it has been a monument to decay, a symbol of neglect. I see it not as a relic of the past, but as a foundation for the future. Tanaka Industries is not building a factory. They are not here to exploit Harmony Creek. They are here as the primary funders of a project I designed. She gestured to Kaido, who gave a slight, formal nod. We're going to tear down that derelict building, and in its place, we're going to build the Eleanor and James Preston Youth and Community Center. A collective gasp went through the room. She had used her parents' names, the parents who had withered under the town's judgment. It will have a new library with a fully funded digital learning program. It will have after-school tutoring. It will have a career counseling center for young adults. It will have a small business incubator to help people start their own ventures right here in Harmony Creek. It will be a place that gives the children of this town the opportunities that I had to leave to find. It will be funded in perpetuity by the Tanaka Foundation. It will cost this town nothing. It will only give. She looked directly at Marcus, her eyes blazing with a fire she had kept banked for over a decade. You ask why I came back, Marcus? I came back because my parents died in debt, paying for medical bills that they might have afforded if they hadn't spent their life savings trying to give their daughter a future this town tried to steal. I came back to build something in their name that ensures no child is ever thrown away here again. I came back to finish the essay I started writing all those years ago. The one about the architecture of a community. The room was utterly, profoundly silent. The story had been flipped. She wasn't an attacker. She was a builder. She wasn't a pawn. She was the architect. Just as the weight of her words settled, a new voice cut through the silence. She's telling the truth. All heads turned. Sarah Jenkins was standing up, her face pale but resolute, clutching a piece of paper in her hand. He's the one who lied. All eyes swung to Marcus. His face had gone ashen. Sarah walked, trembling, to the front. I was Nia's friend. I knew she didn't cheat, and I've spent 11 years living with the shame of my silence. No more. She unfolded the paper. This is a printout of an email. From an old hard drive. It's from Marcus Thorne to his cousin, dated the day after Nia was disqualified from the scholarship. Her voice shook, but she read it loud and clear. It's done. The scholarship is in the bag. Old Lady Gable bought it hook, line, and sinker. Just had to take out the trash. Preston never knew what hit her. The words echoed in the dead silent room. It was a confession. A casual, cruel, undeniable confession. The sound that followed was not a gasp, but a low, collective groan of shame. The entire town, in that single moment, understood. They had been played. They had been complicit. They had destroyed a girl's life to protect a boy's ego. Marcus stood frozen, his face a mask of horror. The foundation of his life, built on that long-buried lie, had just been vaporized. Every eye in the room was on him, not with admiration, but with utter contempt. The mayor, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment, banged his gavel. The council will vote on the sale of the library property to the Preston Anaka Project, one by one. The council members, avoiding Marcus's desperate gaze, voted. It was unanimous. The camera of public opinion had turned on him, and the picture it showed was ugly and irredeemable. Nia watched, not with triumph, but with a quiet, somber sense of release. The weight she had carried for so long was finally, blessedly, gone. It had not been set down. It had been disintegrated by the light of the truth. Kaido looked at her, and for the first time, the Ice King's eyes held a look of profound, undisguised admiration. He had come to witness a business transaction. He had just witnessed a resurrection. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Marcus. He was stripped of his council seat within the week. Thorn Hardware, once the bedrock of Main Street, saw its business plummet as the townspeople registered their disgust with their wallets. He became the new ghost of Harmony Creek, a man people looked through, a living reminder of a collective failure. Nia took no pleasure in his downfall. Her victory was not in his destruction, but in her own creation. The demolition of the old library began a month later. It was a symbolic moment. As the wrecking ball swung, it felt like it was smashing not just bricks and mortar, but the very edifice of the past. Nia stood watching, Hannah's hand in hers, as the old structure came down. Kaido stood beside her, a quiet, solid presence. He had stayed in Harmony Creek, managing his global empire from the strange glass house on the edge of town. His board of directors was bewildered, but he was resolute. "They're laying the foundation next week," Nia said, watching the dust settle. "The architects say the center could be open in 18 months. It will be a fine building," Kaido said, his eyes not on the construction site, but on her. "It is a testament to your strength. It's a testament to my parents," she corrected softly, "and to the idea that a community can be better than its worst moments, the tension that had defined their relationship for years, the careful dance of employer and employee, of guardian and benefactor, had begun to dissolve in the clear air of Harmony Creek. Here, she was not just his brilliant advisor, and he was not just her powerful boss. They were Nia and Kaido, two people bound by a shared love for a child and a deep, unspoken respect that was slowly, quietly, turning into something else. That evening, as Hannah slept upstairs, they sat on the deck of the glass house, looking out at the stars that seemed brighter here, away from the city's glow. "I never properly thank you, Nia," Kaido said, his voice low. "For Hannah, when her mother passed, she was lost. I was lost. I had built an empire, but I could not reach my own daughter. You gave her back to me. Hannah saved me as much as I saved her," Nia replied honestly. "I was just a ghost drifting through life. She gave me a reason to be solid." He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I came to Harmony Creek for a project. To support you in your mission." He turned to face her fully, his dark eyes intense. "But that is no longer why I am here. I am not staying for the community center, Nia. I am staying for you." He reached across the small space between them and took her hand. His touch was not possessive or demanding. It was a question and offering. It was the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. Her past was reconciled. Her future was being built. And her present, in this quiet, starlit moment, was finally, beautifully whole. She curled her fingers around his, a simple, silent answer. A new foundation was being laid, not just of steel and concrete in the center of town, but of hope, trust, and love, right here on this porch. The girl who had fled in shame had returned as a queen, not to rule a kingdom, but to build one, filled with light and opportunity for everyone. And so, we ask you again, what does it mean to return to a place that broke you? Perhaps it means discovering that you were never truly broken, that the pieces of you that were shattered were merely the parts you didn't need, and that in their place you could grow something stronger, truer, and more magnificent than you ever imagined. What part of Nia's story resonated with you the most? The courage to face the past, the power of truth, or the quiet strength of building a better future? Let us know in the comments below, and share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that it's never too late to write your own ending.